One of the things that you've been looking at more frequently at the Gates Foundation in the U.S. is poverty, and also you're looking increasingly at behavioral development and emotional maturity among kids as they grow up. You had a fascinating experience that you write about in the letter with a group of high school students. Tell us about this.
Well, it was a phenomenal thing where these young men, they were all black from single parent households. The counselor had grown up in that environment. And they have multiple times a week a circle where they go around and talk to each other. And there's a real sense of camaraderie. They introduce each other, what they're up to. And then they were asked to talk about anger. And so I got to participate, and hear how they thought about anger and, how they thought they had handled that situation.
You're very introspective in the letter, and the group is called Becoming a Man. Or
exactly, BAM.
BAM. And I was struck that you said that the example you gave them of yourself getting angry was a meeting where you heard that the number of polio cases went up. Did you really just fly off the handle over that?
Well, it's very disappointing because we've gotten Rotary and all these donors, and we're so close, and yet every year we have cases. It's another year, it's a total of about $1 billion that's going into this. And it's, kind of a disappointment where people question, okay, can global health really get tough things done? Our biggest problem is in Pakistan, Afghanistan. But yes, when I open an email that says there were more polio cases, I have to, deal with the huge disappointment.
Well, you also thought about yourself and your own career, and you wrote, growing up, if I thought my parents were being unfair, I could be pretty harsh with them. When I was at Microsoft, I was tough on people I worked with. Some of it helped us be successful, but I'm sure some of it was over the top. So it was inspiring to see these young men in such tough circumstances working on this skill much earlier than I did. What did you learn from the experience, and especially given the overall discussion in society in the US, especially right now, about masculinity in the workplace and how that manifests itself? How did it change your perspective?
Well, I was super impressed with how engaged the boys were. And it definitely made me feel like this type of intervention is very, very important. I mean, when we just look at the statistics and we see particularly black males from single parent households have very high dropout rates, worse than the girls, even worse than, say, Caucasian or Hispanic households at the same level of income. And so how do you get that sense of, okay, I belong in school, I have a sense of where I'm going? And these groups, by sitting and talking with these boys about the paths that are available to them, help them have a sense of support, somebody who's celebrating when they're doing well, somebody who can help out when they're not. It looks like something that should really be scaled up. And in the face of the fact that those statistics have not improved much, even as, okay, you teach math better, you improve the textbook, but you're not really getting to the core of the self-image of these students who are in a very tough environment. So the idea that, boy, we may need to add that, they definitely drew me in.
So, as we said, as part of the focus on poverty in the U.S., you're kind of spreading your wings as the Gates Foundation a little bit. Traditionally, the focus has been on global health and U.S. education. Do you see this focus on poverty and also on emotional maturity among kids as sort of a third pillar, or does it simply fit into what you're already doing?
Well, BAM is integrated into the Chicago school system.
Right.
And so it is a broadening in the sense of trying to understand what interventions beyond just the normal, hey, this English class is better, this math class is better. What is it about mentorship or these cycles, or even explicitly trying to train executive function skill. We did a whole half day at the foundation where the leaders in that field who've done various interventions, some of which look pretty promising. You know, there's always lots of things that if you really measure them don't work, but some things even meet that very high test. And so it's a broadening of, okay, what is hard for that student? Even understanding is that stress of the environment even creates sort of a biological situation where concentration is much more difficult. You know, absolutely, that is a factor. Now, coming up with an intervention that improves the executive function skill or offsets the kind of stressed mode that you're in if you live in a tough neighborhood, that is much harder. But there's very little R&D money in this space. You know, it's not like software or pharmaceuticals where, you know, 10, 15% of the money gets spent on R&D. In education, society spends not even 0.1%. So it is a case where foundations might be able to come in, you know, find the people with the best ideas, really prove which ones work. And so we're casting our net as wide as we can, or even our network of schools thing, which is our big new strategy that Bob Hughes runs for K through 12. Instead of us saying what the tactics are, where we had some great tactics like peer review, we're more letting the recipient come to us and say, okay, these are the tactics. And a lot of them are taking these interventions that are kind of non-academic skills. So, you know, hopefully in 5 years, this field will be a lot smarter because the underinvestment, you know, is sad, and yet, you know, maybe there's some really good things that'll now be discovered finally.